All right, welcome back to Management 2064 and Foundations of Entrepreneurship. We're going to cover Chapter 10 today. This is Wednesday, April the 1st, and Chapter 10 is Creating Revenue Models. So again, if you look at Chapters 9 and 10, these are great areas for business planning and creating the models, the revenue models, that we will need to truly understand the feasibility of our ventures and what we're trying to do. This is, as I mentioned in chapters 8 and 9, certainly chapter 10, this gets you into Management 3064, and we really take a deep dive in Management 3064 with regards to business models and such. So let's move into chapter 10, kind of looking here, learning objectives, and kind of looking at what is revenue, right? How do we understand that? How do we distinguish it from the business model? We're going to look at pricing strategies and really kind of what the product and service looks like. This is, I love this. So Scott Adams, if you've ever seen a Dilbert cartoon, Scott Adams is the cartoonist with this. And I love this because it's remind people that profit is the difference between revenue and expenses. This makes you look smart. And you go, well, I'm not so sure that's funny, but being in business for 30 years, it amazes me of the people that I've come across with in business. And they could have been business majors, or they could have come from a technical degree of some type, but folks really struggle with what profit is. I've even, I've served on a couple of executive teams, and when we're in the budget process or we're doing, the monthly review, it amazes me how quickly people forget the equation there. So let's look at revenue and revenue models. And obviously, revenue is the income gained from sales of goods or services, right? That's a top line look at it. Units sold times the pricing. And obviously, this is a key component of the business model because it really helps us understand, how we'll make profits, how will the income, be made from that point. Something that entrepreneurs really have to ask themselves repeatedly, okay? And remember, again, we've talked several times now how this is an iterative process. So we certainly, the more we go through the process, the more we talk to people, the more, and I've told you, or I've reminded us many, many times in this course to get to know our customers, right? Because they're going to help us understand the marketplace from that standpoint. But some great questions is, how much are customers willing to pay? Okay, there's a need, could be a gap, but at the end of the day, how much are customers willing to pay? Think about what we're going through right now here, March 2020, April 2020, and think about some of the products that are on the market today that are commodities, but people are willing to pay for, right? Bread, eggs, toilet paper, these types of things. The other question an entrepreneur has to say is, how many customers do I need, right? Where do I want to go? How much cash can be generated through sales? How much does each revenue stream contribute to the total? So these are four critical questions that as we move through the maturation of our business model and kind of our product and feasibility, these are questions we have to kind of step back and ask ourselves on a continuous basis. Let's look at different types of revenue models. I love this in the razor and the razor blade model. So many of you probably know this already, but the companies, Schick and Gillette and others, they would practically give the handle of a razor away. Why? Because they really wanted the consumable of the blade, right? The blade will last a week, 2 weeks. Braden, who has his shaving business, I love his story, could tell us another way, right? but this is an important piece where you will practically give one of the products away, the razor handle, in order to have the consumable. When I was at Tetra, right, we had aquarium products. And so in aquariums, you have filtration, aquarium filtration. And so the filter itself, yes, we put a lot of time and effort into that, a lot of innovation, but we were more concerned about the filter, right? The white floss, the carbon inside. We wanted people to change that every 3 to 4 weeks because our profit margin in that product was 60 or 70% versus the filter 10 to 15%. Sometimes single digits if it was you know, some type of a promotional for Walmart or PetSmart. Okay, so very, very important piece. But you have the there's 10 types of revenue models. You learned about these in your readings of chapter 10. Licensing is one that I think we many times forget about, but as organizations come up with you know, new products or product enhancements, licensing can be a way for an organization to have revenue outside of their current sales channels. So for example, they may have a licensing agreement with someone in France or Italy or somewhere in Europe where it's not necessarily a competitive nature and allow an organization in those countries to be able to take a raw material or take a type of formulation and go with it from that standpoint. A lot of data now, right? So lots of opportunities from a data standpoint. There's other pieces of franchising, utility, and usage. Just saw today, right, where the American Electric Power is wanting to increase the fees 5%, right, because of the utility and the usage of the utilities from that standpoint. Professional services, that's an area that I live in. And, you know, as a marketeer, a chance for my organization to provide strategy and professionalism and be able to charge for that in that standpoint. So generating revenue from free, it's kind of an interesting part. And the goal here is that we're going to give something away as in a free piece, like a premium, but in a freemium, in order to then generate interest and generate revenue from a different standpoint. Here's some ideas for direct cross doing that. You know, give away drinks to sell the show. Many times you'll see a comedy show, for example, and they'll have free drinks, or perhaps there's a free appetizer. Think about cell phones. You know, even as much as this innovation has gone, these technologies, these gadgets are at a very reduced margin. But the point of it is that the providers of the data, right, AT&T, U.S. Cellular, Verizon, that gives us chances to have the talk, okay, from that standpoint. Here's some multi-party markets. You can see here Zillow, LinkedIn. These are companies that we all may understand and help us in that regard. Adobe, I think, was one of the earliest players in this, in the sense of having free document readers, but at the end of the day, using their technology in order to utilize the document readers. So you go back probably 15 years ago in some of those standpoints. LinkedIn is now doing it. You can build a profile there. They've been doing it now for 12 years. But if you want to really understand who's looking at your profile, or if you want to be seen by more recruiters as you mature in your career, they have a premium service. I think it's $39 or $49.99 per month. Used to use it. I was in sales, and it was a great lead generation tool for us to be able to do that. It certainly helped us in that regard. Here's some freemium ideas, right? Looking at TurboTax, being able to give away the federal tax software, but let's sell the state piece. And typically, what are consumers going to do? They're going to do both. They're federal and state together in that regard. I think Skype is a great one, although now they've sort of become irrelevant with some of the other newer technologies that have come up to bear. Zoom, we think of Zoom as being free, but actually someone along the way is paying for that. It's probably within our fees here at Virginia Tech to be able to have access to that from that standpoint. Let's look at the drivers for revenue, and it sort of makes sense, right? Customers, but in order to have customers, we've got to have what the price, right? So we've got to be able to establish what that price looks like. Again, with good market research, good intimacy with customers, we'll be able to understand what that price point is and how much they're willing to pay. What's our selling process, right? Is it direct to consumer? Is it through distribution? Is it online? And more importantly, this kind of goes back to the razor blade story, but frequency is important. Okay, so again, a lot of times when we're buying a cell phone and we're getting data, what are they asking us to do? They're asking us for 24 months, right? So they want that monthly frequency, the monthly charges that goes along with that. If you're a part of a subscription service, this has become very popular, but subscription services for food, well, they'll send you a box every week and you can kind of make your own meals from that frequency monthly, right? Some folks have a fashion wardrobe subscription where every month there's a company called 5-4 that came out several years ago. And again, there's a monthly piece of that frequency, right? Think about gyms, gym memberships, and things like that. Important on the revenue side, we can never ever forget the cost, right? So there's cost drivers here. Not to get too deep into business terms and business pieces, but the cost of goods sold, which is COGS, cost of goods sold, that's the value of goods sold when a sales take place. Okay, so at that moment of time, what's the value of those goods at that particular time? Other cost drivers include administrative, salaries, research, marketing, and those are what we call OPEX, or operating expenses. This is an area that organizations, especially startups, sort of forget about. Yes, we got to have, we've got to have the best of the computers, right? Yes, we need to hire someone to make phone calls. Yes, we need to be in a business park. So we all of a sudden startups start agreeing to all these nice haves, right? Yes, we got to have a ping pong table. Yes, we want to have lunch delivered, to every worker every week. Yes, we want to give workers time off. All of that has a cost. All of that brings in operating expenses, and so many times as part of my coaching is keep an eye on the ball, keep an eye on the cost, because what you'll find is the profit will begin to erode, or it's hard to get to that profit race and that profit finish line if at the end of the day the costs are driving it. Okay, here's some operating expenses, just some things to think about, right? Office supplies, pen and paper, right? Copy paper, taxes, insurance, salaries, and you can see many, many more there that are listed. It amazes me. I spend a lot of time with my State Farm insurance agent at least 3 times a year. For example, I'm at the Corporate Research Center here in Blacksburg. They want a certificate of insurance, right? And it just changed. Then we have to have business continuity insurance. And the next thing you know, I get a letter in the mail from Montgomery County who wants taxes. And then the town of Blacksburg has taxes. The state of Virginia wants taxes. The federal government wants tax. I mean, it really can become very burdensome, and it's difficult to keep your eye on the ball when you're talking about that. Let's look at income statements. Our Management 1104 students have spent quite a bit of time here. learning about this. This is towards the end of the semester for them, but certainly a financial report, that measures the performance of the business on both a monthly basis, quarterly basis, and then even on an annual basis. Okay, and it's important to understand that this is referred to. Income statements are also referred to as the profit and loss statement for the organization. At the end of the day, it just becomes an active formula, right? So it's we have the total revenue and then what we're going to do is we have that total revenue, how many we've sold. So how many we've sold times our pricing gives us our top line. That's the revenue piece. But at the end of the day, we've got our cost of goods sold, which we talked about earlier. What's it cost to make something, or what's it cost to have a service? And then we have all these expenses we've talked about, right? And then that gets us down to what our net income looks like. That's what the income statement. Here's a great example, right? So a revenue here, $200,000. Cost of goods was $100,000, so kind of a 50% gross profit there. Interesting. Then we're going to take out sales, administration, marketing, R&D. We also have depreciation and amortization. So that we add that up and subtract that out. That gives us an operating profit then of $41,000. Definitely helps us to understand then that we have other expenses like interest expense and taxes, and now all of a sudden our net income is $31,270. And look at that, our revenue, we started out with $200,000. So a sales and marketing team, very, very excited. We're going out, we're breaking records, right? But sometimes now we've had to spend a little bit more in marketing. Maybe we've had to do more, we've had to hire more people on an administrative side. So yes, we can grow the top line, but our expenses tend to increase as well. And that's where, again, we want to manage that as best we can from that standpoint. Let's talk about pricing strategies. I don't want to get too deep here, but it is important. This is where a competitive landscape and truly understanding what the marketplace looks like. So research, becoming as intelligent as possible. And that means how is the competition handling prices, right? We can ask distributors, we can do research online, we can spend time in the marketplace looking at it. Do they sell direct to consumer? Do they use distributors? How are they set up, right? And so we can ask others in the industry to become more intelligent. In fact, when I was at Marble and worked within the marketing group, we called this market intelligence, and we wanted to gather this as frequently as and try to have as many data points as we could with that, because sometimes it would change. For example, a pricing strategy could be by region. So what a pricing strategy a competitor may have in the Northeast based on their channels of distribution could be very, very different than the way they have it perhaps on the West Coast. And it a lot of times has to do with relationships between salespeople, relationships to executive teams. There could be some legacy pricing in there. There's a lot there as part of it. But at the end of the day, it gets down to how much customers would pay or have paid in the past. And that's a critical element from that. I'm not going to get too deep into the pricing strategies here. I just want you to have really a good overall view of this. Again, we spend time of this in other courses, but there's some that you probably are very familiar with, even with skimming, or that's really an introductory pricing strategy where we're going to go out and get the best possible price at the lowest, perhaps to gain some market share. With that, the highest possible price could be based on a trend. It could be that we're the first to the market. It could be that there's a popularity there. And so we're going to maximize and optimize that as best we can, all the way to bundle pricing, which many of us use this and don't realize it on a daily basis, perhaps in the foods we eat, or even in the electronics that we may purchase, once or twice a year. Here are all the different types, right? There's 8 here. There's actually some even beyond this. Dynamic pricing's not listed, but dynamic is used a lot in the HTM market, hospitality, tourism, and management, where you could optimize the pricing from a seasonality standpoint. Again, think about New York City hotel. This is before COVID-19, but New York City hotels during a season, Thanksgiving, right? They can maximize the pricing of that just based on how much demand is in a certain area. And here's bundle pricing. Again, we use this, it's used quite frequently in the food service industry. You order a number 1 or a number 5 on the menu. If you were to add up each one of those, a hamburger plus French fries plus a drink, we could even throw a cookie in with that. If we were to, add up A plus B plus C plus D, that would come out to one price. But when we bundle that, it's going to be that normal price with a discount applied. And you say, well, why would you do that? It's much easier from an ordering perspective. There's some efficiencies there. At the end of the day, it's about the customer, and we want the customer to think that there is a good value from them from a pricing standpoint, build loyalty, and build frequency. We want them to come back daily, or certainly multiple times per week, and do that. Okay, so that's going to conclude chapter 10. Again, really just an overview here, because as you move through your entrepreneurship track within Pamplin, we spend quite a bit of time. I mean, there's actually a whole semester that we deep dive into chapters 8, 9, 10, and really spend quite a bit of time not only understanding that, but learning by doing in those areas too. With that, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I hope this has been very beneficial to you. Again, stay safe, stay healthy, stay strong. Again, reach out if you need anything. And until next time, take care.